I had presented a few months ago about how I was using AI to create some software. And as part of that, once I created the product, I sort of had to figure out how to market it. And so, of course, used ChatGPT to help me with a marketing plan. And one of the things it suggested was participating in some of the Reddit forums that I had posted in. And so thinking to myself, boy, that's kind of a lot of work. Maybe I can automate some of that. That's where this idea came from. So essentially, I tried to think about how I could more or less create a little digital employee. And I ended up using a product or a service called N8N, and I'll show you guys what I did. So just a quick update. There are two quick update slides, and the rest of it is on sort of what I did with this. So in January, the last time I presented, I had about 1,000 prompts in Cursor and Claude and ChatGPT. I just sort of moved to Cursor. Few thousand lines of code. The software worked, it wasn't complete, and Claude had suggested an idea for a visual firewall rule designer. For those of you that may remember, it's a wizard to allow you to quickly deploy network VLANs and firewall rules and so forth for people who are upgrading to a brand of product called Unify. So sort of fast forward to today, 4,000 to 5,000 prompts, about 20,000 lines of code. I have a Windows version and a Mac version released. Never in a million years that I think I was going to do a Mac version, but with AI, I was able to get one out very quickly. Implemented the visual firewall designer. AI generated an icon, a logo, and a website. I was announced on 2 Reddit forums. Worked with OpenAI on a promotional plan. I say promotional versus marketing because I'm not spending any money. And I've created my first AI agent. And sort of the second thing is initial versus final form. This is what AI had come up with as a concept, and this is what it ended up looking like in the product. So it was pretty interesting just in terms of what AI was doing, and this is the logo that ChatGPT came up with as well. So let's talk about the AI agent. So the project goals were basically, that's good, I got a typo in the first word here. Every hour, review posts from 2 subreddits to identify new posts and rank them for relevancy. And then send me an hourly email listing these new posts with proposed responses for the responses that are most relevant. And then provide some sort of feedback mechanism so I can train the AI to make it better at this over time. So this is kind of where I started. And as I was going through this, it really felt like I was building an employee. Sort of the picture I had in my head is, okay, I could hire someone to do this, but I'm actually going to program something to do this. And it was kind of interesting as I was sort of thinking about what I was doing and working through it. So the current status, the agent is working. It's been running for a week and a half or so. I've retrained the ranking prompt twice, retrained the response prompt once. I've made 10 to 15 comments. I'm making a couple a day. And I just changed the OpenAI model to see about cost and effectiveness. It turned out to be a little more expensive than I thought it was going to be. So that was sort of an interesting thing. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So just so that everybody understands, this is actually what the agent is doing for me. It's generating an email on an hourly basis that looks something like this. So it's being sent to me. It gives me the title of the post, when it was posted, which subreddit. I can click to actually view the post. This is the post itself. It's scored it. If it's 0.7 or above, it generates a draft response. This is technical stuff. So ignore that. I've got a link here for feedback so I can identify whether it's relevant or not relevant. And that's it. And then, you know, if it's a busy hour, I'll have an email full of 10 or 15 of these. If it's not a very busy hour, it could be 1 or 2. So just as you get I wanted to show this first so that as you see the slides that are coming up, you'll at least understand what the output of all of this is. So I don't have to go to Reddit, find the post, look for the latest, etc. I just get this email and it says these are the latest ones in these 2 subreddits. And the agent was built so it could be generalized and so forth. So the development process, I thought it wasn't what I expected, but initially I created a project with multiple chats using ChatGPT. So I had an initial discussion to determine what was possible. And in that discussion, I actually asked what models I should use for the project and system design, for project management and implementation. And so at that point, it said use 4.1 for project and system design and 4.0 for project management and implementation. So I ended up really with two chats that I used. The 4.1, which was the overall design, really only used it once. And that generated a chat for the generated a prompt for the project manager. And then the project manager essentially generated prompts for each of the individual workflows and handled some design changes, but in general, there were 4 or 5 workflows. And so the first chat sort of gave an overall design. The project manager nailed down the details and then generated prompts for each of the individual workflows. Then chats 3 through 7, because there were 5 workflows, were the actual implementation chats. So I had one for each workflow. And then there were a few when I ran into trouble or I had some digression or testing because I didn't want to, completely digress in the middle of a thread. I don't know whether anyone else has done this. I thought this was sort of interesting. I hadn't done it before, but I sort of, kind of had a team of 4 or 5 people, and it actually made it very easy to keep it organized. So I created a project, have all these different chats, and if I had an issue with one of the workflows, I'd go back to that particular chat and pick up the conversation. And so it provided nice context for doing so. I was originally going to build it in Python, but a friend told me about this solution called N8N, which is basically a workflow designer. It's pretty powerful, and they've added the ability now to call out to AI engines, and that's what makes this really interesting. And then I thought, hey, while I'm at it, maybe I should use some sort of MCP Lite to communicate between the workflows, so that if I want to replace this with different components in the future, this thing might live for a little bit longer. So I was trying to potentially future-proof what I was doing as well. So this is a block diagram of the workflows or the agents. There's one that gets the new Reddit post every hour. There's a director that stores the new post, the classifier that ranks the new post and the responses, and then it goes back to the director to actually store the rankings and the responses. So these are 3 workflows here: the get the post, the director, and the classifier. There's the workflow that sends the emails and the workflow that allows me to deliver feedback to the system. So some of these are abbreviated. This one is not. I figured for explanation purposes, it would be easier if I didn't show the actual details of all the workflows. But in this case, the first workflow allows you to fetch and format the last 10 posts. So it basically grabs the last 10 posts from this subreddit, the last 10 posts from this subreddit, combines them into a list of a max 20, cleans up all the data, and then routes it to the next step in the workflows. So the next step, this is the director. So what this is doing is it takes the data in and basically says, am I classifying or am I logging? And in the first round, it does the classifying. So in this case, it essentially stores existing posts. So basically, it's looking to see whether any of the posts that just got picked up are already in the database. And if they're not in the database, it adds their IDs to the database and then sends all the new posts to the classifier. This is highly abbreviated, but I thought it would be easier for tonight. So what the classifier does is it goes through each of those new posts. So let's say there are 10 new posts, 5 from one subreddit and 4 from another, that ChatGPT will then, based on a prompt, which I'll show you in a second, will actually score the post and will then extract the relevance. And then essentially what we're doing is saying, okay, if the relevance is 0.7 or greater, let's generate a draft response. Then let's format that into an MCP Lite format. And the last step basically is it goes back to the director. This time we're taking the second path and it stores the post, the ranked, and the response in the database. And so really what we're doing here is we're using ChatGPT to say, hey, I've got these 5 or 6 new posts. Which one are relevant for the kinds of things I might want to respond to? And then if the rank is high enough, draft a response for me. I will tell you that the relevance is working really well. The draft response is not so much. So I got to do a bunch more work here. So all of that gets stored in the database, and then on an hourly basis, essentially we read pending rows from the database. If there's nothing to process, do nothing. Otherwise, compile the email and send the email. And then simultaneously we mark things as processed. These, for people who haven't seen N8N, this is what N8N looks like. So it's drag and drop, and then you double click into each of these elements and you can specify exactly what it's doing. So these are the various steps. So the last step is sending this summary email every hour. So this is a partial, I didn't have enough room to put it on here, but this is a partial prompt for the classifier that ranks things. So evaluating a Reddit post that determines a good candidate for the tool that I wrote, return a number between 0 and 1, indicating relevance. Part of what the training has done, it's allowed the prompt to be generated so that there are the things I want to prioritize are in this prioritized list, and the things that I'm not interested in are in this lower the score, and in the end, it's just return a number between 0 and 1. So all that comes out of this entire prompt is just a number. And it's like, do whatever you want to do, but just give me a number between 0 and none, and 0 and 1, don't say anything else.
I'll give you a number at the
end. Exactly. So some of the specific learnings, it really felt like I was building an employee. I was telling friends as I was working on this, it really felt like I was sort of designing and building an employee. And similar to hiring a new employee, you need a good job description. AI can help you write the job description or, sort of the overall goals of the project. Using multiple chats to manage the development project, which I hadn't done before because everything I've been doing is in Cursor and, kind of had different chat sessions for different pieces of the software, but this was actually very different. And with Cursor and Claude, it loses context way faster than ChatGPT does, so I could keep these chats going for a long time. Once the agent is running, it needs tweaking and training. Again, much like an employee, you've got to train it to make it better. It's not perfect out of the box. So there was tweaking. Some of the tweaking was for the process, specific formats, content to the emails, and some of it was refining the prompts so that the ranking and sample responses are useful. Still not clear to me that I'll be able to generate useful draft responses. We'll see. TBD. I'm continuing to work on that. It's incredibly valuable, though, just every hour to see if there are any posts that I should respond to. That in and of itself is of great value. And so if I can, if I can get some draft responses done, great. If I can't, it's still worthwhile. A lot more expensive than I thought. It's not crazy expensive, but I'm spending $45 to $50 a month on ChatGPT API calls. I was using ChatGPT 4 and N8N to process about 60 to 65 posts a day. There may be some room to optimize how I call ChatGPT. I need to learn a little bit more about what's possible, but I sort of figured, it would be a few pennies a day. It was not, it's $1.50, $2 a day to run. I was thinking, man, I'm not doing much of anything and it's a couple bucks to run. Boy, if you're running a real project, this could get real expensive real fast. So I thought that was interesting. And again, it may turn out that GPT 3.5 Turbo, which is what I'm trying now, may be just fine. But again, I was surprised at how quickly the few API calls actually added up. And really just in closing, some unexpected observations. The good is ChatGPT can actually read workflow images. So I could copy and paste one of these images into ChatGPT and it would understand the images and tell me what I did wrong and tell me what to do. I wasn't really expecting that, but that was actually pretty interesting. The not so good is ChatGPT doesn't really know the latest version of N8N, so it gave me a lot of incorrect information. It made a bunch of mistakes, and so I had to sort of work through that. And again, my comment about the APIs are more expensive than I expected. I had done some calculations with ChatGPT when I started this. And it was like, oh, it'll be 10 cents a day, 15 cents a day. It was off by an order of magnitude. So it wasn't actually that close to what I got. So that was it. But it's working. It's really interesting. I thought the process was fun. And so I said to Paul, I thought I'd share because, we talked about agents a lot. And I kind of I kind of don't get it. And now I get it. I literally built myself an employee. And I could certainly see doing this for other tasks. So that's it. If there are questions, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, bunch of questions. Go ahead, Karen and Lucinda.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. This is inspiring to see. So thank you for sharing that. I have a question in terms of improving the responses, the response drafts. Are you providing it with anything to form those responses, like tone or voice or a style, or even like a documentation library? Like what is your
So,
plan?
so far what I've done is I'll identify a post that I want to respond to. I'll draft a response. I've got a very long thread with ChatGPT going that helps me with that response. So what I'll do is I've taken 5 to 10 of those responses, says, here are this is the tone, this is the way I'm writing the responses. And can you generate a prompt that will generate this type of response? That's what I've done. I think part of it is I'm not trying to respond to just any post. Obviously, that's what the rankings are for. But I'm trying to, respond to stuff I know. ChatGPT obviously doesn't know what I know. And the whole thing is new to me. The actual subject matter that I'm commenting on is relatively new. And so that's probably a little difficult because I don't really want to pretend I'm an expert on stuff. If I don't actually know the answer, I don't want to respond. I'm not trying to just have a ChatGPT response. I want to make sure it's something I know. So that's what I've been doing so far. But I'll be honest, I've spent more time so far, because it hasn't been running that long, with the ranking prompt than with the response prompt. So I've got to spend a lot more time on it, but that's what I've done so far.
Thanks.
Great. Go ahead, Lucinda.
Yeah, actually, I did want to. Yeah, I was surprised about that. You got the ranking to be that's something that you're very happy with. So I was just wondering, what did you do in your iterations to have it rank in a way? Because I normally find that it doesn't. Actually, it's not good at numbers. I use it as in a 0 or 1 mode, not 0.7.
So what I did was one of the workflows. So this workflow, where's the? Oh, actually, I didn't show you the workflow. This right here kicks off a workflow, and essentially what it's doing, it's writing the title, the post, forget the draft response, and the score to a database, along with whether I think it's relevant 1 or not relevant 0. At this point, I've got about 150 to 200 things in the database. And so what I'm basically doing is copying it into a spreadsheet, uploading it to ChatGPT and saying, look, here are your rankings. Here's my opinion. Please update the prompt. And so as I add more and more, it's getting smarter and smarter.
Okay.
So that's essentially it. So I don't have 5 or 10 at this point. I've probably got 150.
That's 450.
And at some point I'll have more. I think that's why. So it's certainly not perfect, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, that's impressive. That's very cool. Yeah, and then on the evaluation side, I was going to ask you about that as well for the emails. I don't know about you, but I actually have been doing, applications, and some of my prompts are really long. They're like 3 or 4 pages, where I just give tone. I say, here's some examples, and I say, here's a checklist, here's a framework, etc. So I don't know if you're not using a long prompt, maybe just try and add more stuff and see how it works.
I think it's a great idea, because both of the prompts, both the ranking prompt and the output prompt, are short. And so ChatGPT is writing short prompts.
Yeah.
And I think, to your point, it may be time to add the human element to the prompt and not just ChatGPT. I think it's a great idea. So I got to spend a lot of time on the response prompt, but I think that's a very good suggestion. I will give it a try. Thank you.
Dan, we're waiting for other questions. Very curious, your notion that you thought you were designing an employee. So tell us more of that. Was that designing software more literal and?
No, it was literally, because what I was thinking was sort of like, okay, I could hire someone to do this. I could have an intern. It's like, okay, what do I want the intern to do? I want you to read these Reddit posts. Your job is to watch these 2 Reddit forums and see if you can identify posts that I should respond to. And if you think there's a post I should respond to, please draft a response and I'll take a look at it. And so the picture I had in my head as I was doing this is, I could pay someone to do this, or I could write this agent. And so that, for whatever reason, maybe it's just a strange perspective, but it really felt like I was designing an employee.
Yeah, and what I hear, Dan, is a lot more kind of output focused. This is what I want. This is this is the goal.
Yes.
Not necessarily all the hows. This is the
100%.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly right. And so, the intelligence is in those 2 boxes, in the workflows. And again, those are abbreviated workflows. There's a lot more going on than what was there, but I thought for tonight, I'd just get rid of the extra stuff to show you. But yeah, you know, without the intelligence, it's just a workflow.
Yeah, really good. Yeah, go ahead, Matt, and then John.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Dan, by the way, for all this. Quick question, and you may have covered this in your earlier slides, but just wanted to kind of double check. Is this a no-code situation that you're doing, or is it low-code? Where's that on the spectrum?
So the answer is, sorry, I'm looking for a workflow. So N8N, I would say, is low code. I'm looking because I got rid of some stuff here, so just bear with me for a second. So as an example, this workflow is probably 15 more steps, okay? But this is actually, there's code in here. So this is all drag and drop. Pull down menus, drag and drop to pull elements out of the JSONs and so forth. But there are places, for example, I've got to extract things out of the JSON to do something. There is code. So ChatGPT is writing some code for this node. But this node is no code. This node is no code. 90% of this, I would say 90 to 95% is no code.
And when you bumped into the drag and drop pieces for the low code, was there code that you had to do and you knew how to do that, or is it just the fact that there's code in there?
No, so it's all JavaScript. I do not know JavaScript. ChatGPT wrote 100% of the JavaScript. So think of those different chat sessions. There was context. It knew I needed to drop in, extract this, or I took a screenshot and said, wait a minute, there's way too much data in the JSON, you know, in the incoming data. We need to get rid of a whole bunch of layers of the JSON structure. So it wrote code to actually do that. Or, you know, there were 10 elements coming in. We need 3, pull them out. Something like that. So I didn't, you know, I didn't write any code. You can definitely do this without writing code. But you definitely have to know how to design a process and kind of at the highest level, design a system or write software. It's not that I'm writing code, but there's just the thought process.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you.
Go ahead, John, and then Alula.
Yeah, Dan. Hey, thanks. This is great. How, if at all, do you now think differently about your organization and people you would hire and things you want to train your people with now that you've personally gone through this experience?
So my organization right now is very small. And for this particular thing, you're looking at the organization because this is a hobby. But I think that there's no question as I'm thinking about kind of entry level stuff right now, I would absolutely be looking to automate that kind of stuff. I mean, this is literally something you'd have someone spend part-time on or an intern. So I think, you know, just kind of looking at certainly a marketing organization, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you could definitely sort of, you know, program, you know, create a workflow for that would, you know, certainly replace a person or two. It's not clear to me because if these replies, John, were spectacular, we'd be having a very different conversation. So I don't know how long it will take to get there, but, you know, doing the ranking and actually doing the work, that I think is pretty straightforward. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Go ahead, Lula, then Raymond.
Okay, thank you. Great work done. I really like it. But I want to know I kind of see that you have Excel in there and email, Reddit. So that means you have to do a lot of integration. And
No, it's all done in N8N.
oh, really? You don't?
Yeah,
have to
N8N
use
is
your
done.
keys?
Yeah, N8N is, if for anybody who hasn't played with it, you should go play with it. Literally 3 weeks ago, I was about ready to do this in Python.
Oh,
And was ready to go back to Cursor and mess around with this and figured it would take, you know, 5-6 weeks to do. And a friend happened to mention this service. I think they're competitors. I just don't know who they are. He said, go check out N8N. And so I did. So all of this is done. So if we go back to here, N8N, you know, create a Google Sheet. You give it the ID of the sheet. It goes and identifies, or the workbook. It'll go and identify what the worksheets are in the workbook. It'll go find the column headers, so it can use it as a database. and it can append, it can search. There are a whole bunch of functions that it can do. Zero coding to make that happen, literally zero.
And if this is the actual product, I know you have another product you're using this to market it, but if this is your product,
No,
like,
no, no.
what
This
did
is a tool. I'm sorry.
This is a tool, but
This
if
is a tool for me to market my product.
Yeah, but let's assume this is my product I want to take to market. Would I be able to host it or take it into my own domain and stuff? Do you know that?
The answer is apparently there are ways that if I wanted to productize this and sell this, I could. I haven't investigated that. I think that's what you're asking. So I don't think right now, apparently there are ways to create containers with N8N modules in them, and I could potentially sell what I've done here. That wasn't the intent, but supposedly I can.
Thank you.
How does this compare to like make.com?
I don't know. I haven't heard of make.com. You mean N8N versus make?
Yeah.
I don't know. As I said, I'd never heard of any of these until my friend mentioned. So I didn't even look. He said, go check out N8N. I looked at it, looked pretty cool. It looked like it was doable. And so I did it.
We've been using make for many years, and I think it's supposed to be a little simpler. So
it is.
To be honest with you, I don't think it could be much simpler. I'm sure that there are things maybe that make does that N8N does and vice versa. But honestly, this was pretty easy. And they've done a nice job of, whatever their integrations are with ChatGPT are nice. The integrations they've done with everything are pretty nice. So, my guess is it's one of many, although my friend has told me that N8N is one of the really hot companies doing this.
Yeah.
But that's all I can tell you.
How is the error handling?
I'm scratching my head for a second just because the error handling, essentially what happens is you can watch these workflows execute. And let's say there's an error here. You'll get a green arrow here, a green arrow here. This box turns red. And so you can actually click the execution and see what the input was. And it'll tell you this is what the error handling, that this is what the error was. They've got a built-in AI that potentially helps. So I would actually say the error handling is pretty good, but figuring out exactly what was causing the error, not always so simple.
Oh, I mean, like if it runs into an error, can it correct itself?
No.
Probably not.
It doesn't correct itself.
No. No.
So if I just throw in real quick, so I've been doing N8N for a while now. I'm so glad that Dan introduced this to the group because I'm always enthusiastic about a lot of things. I am full on N8N, but I have a development background. So some of the interesting things I've done with N8N, I have a clone. I have a person where I give it my memories. I worked on an app about 4 or 5 months ago called, it was a memory app. And so I have a pipeline that I did in N8N that I can speak into Telegram, all of my thoughts, everything about me. And this entity knows all about me. I used N8N for that. The other cool thing with N8N is you can export JSON of the components. So you can take a workflow and export it in JSON and then put it into your IDE, pull it into Cursor or Warp or something, and just continue working and adjust it and modify it. You can also go the other way. You can go into, I think it was ChatGPT that I used, and I said, I pointed it to N8N's documentation. I said, I need a pipeline to do this. So I've done like social media publishing. I did a brand brief. I'm looking at short form video generator. You can tell it what you want, like what you want, not what someone else wants, and ask ChatGPT to do a pipeline for you in JSON and then import that JSON into N8N. And another cool thing is you can run N8N locally, which is really great for development. You don't have to deal with the cloud. But I'm telling you, folks, get on it, man, because N8N is great. There's people out there already, monetizing different workflows, and it's a lot of fun. It reminds me of Roblox, but I go back and forth. I'll start something in Replit or Make or Lovable. and then I'll go over to N8N. N8N feels more engineering to me, but that's all I have to say about that.
No, but I think, but what Raymond's talking about, this is sort of what I found. I certainly wasn't importing JSON, but, I was using the pictures and ChatGPT to tell me what to do. And it's quite flexible. And as I wanted to, as I changed some of the requirements or sort of the job description, it told me exactly what to do step by step. And I told ChatGPT, it said, well, here are the 10 things to do. I said, stop. Let's do one at a time. I'll let you know when I'm done with each node, this being a node. Let's get the first node right, and then we can work on the second node and the third node. So for someone like me who's less technical than Raymond, I found it pretty straightforward to use myself. So anyway, I suppose maybe Raymond, whether using N8N or something similar, it's worth messing around with these things, because when you can start to put intelligence in the middle of the workflows is actually, I think, where it gets to be particularly interesting.
Yeah, I like your approach of creating an employee, and then adding personality is like a great thing. I did something like that for a it was for a chef who wanted a publishing system for books, right? He wanted to be able to publish books on different cuisines, and we had to put his personality into the
interesting
into the agent. Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Well, with that, we're over time, but fabulous discussion. Dan, absolutely great presentation. Thank you, come back and sharing in a learning lab. This is what it's all about. We mentioned Make a few times. I mentioned in the chat next Monday, Surat's going to show how he built an AI for a flower shop using Make and Relevance AI and a few other tools here. So we'll keep going down Raymond's preferred list here. Maybe we'll get someone to do Lovable. Thank you, everyone. Really good discussion. Let's keep the learning going.